Hi everybody, this is Yaku. I thought I would make a little video to show you the 6 generations of M5 and 1/18 scale, and I thought to make things a little bit more interesting I'll tell you a little bit about the actual road cars. So we'll go from the E28 to the E34 to the E39, then to the E60, the F10, and then the latest generation of F90. So if we move back through the generations, the grandfather of M5s is actually the E28, an extremely desirable car today. These cars were actually produced from 1984 to 1988. Only 2,241 were ever produced in the world, of which 1,340 was for the North American market, and of course that includes Canada. This car was actually powered by two types of engines, the M88, which was the non-catalyst engine and was for the European market mostly, on the rest of the world actually, and then the S38, which was a catalyst engine which was destined for North America and Japan. It was a 3.5 litre engine, actually derived from the M1, and the engine produced 286 horsepower and 251 pound-feet torque in the M88 spec, that is non-catalyst, and then 260 horsepower and 243 pounds of torque in the S38. The car, as you see here, is actually very similar to the North American spec. The US cars all came in black with the tan interior, and actually in Canada they had the option of black on black, which was unique to the Canadian market. The rest of the world had different color options. And then interestingly enough, this car had a 6.2 second 0 to 60 time back in the early 80s to late 80s, which was incredible. It also had a 5-speed manual transmission only. And what makes this car very special is it was actually hand produced by BMW Motorsport in, of course, very limited numbers. The exception being my home country, South Africa, where we received 96 of these M5s, actually with the M-Tech body kit that arrived in kit form and was assembled and manufactured in the Roslyn plant. The specific model that you are seeing is made by Ottomobile. They are extremely rare. There's only, I think, 2,000 of these produced. Yep, number 487 of 2,000. But the detail is truly amazing. The light is a little bit difficult, but you can see the detail on the seats, the handbrake, the little window buttons, the speakers, even the demister on the rear window, the decals, the detail on the wheels, and of course, very importantly, the M5 emblem on the front grille. All in all, this is truly a very unique, very special vehicle, and really laid the groundwork for future M cars, especially putting a big engine in a family sedan that could really tear up the roads. One interesting fact about the real E28s in North America, there was actually a lawsuit by the US owners against BMW, because BMW originally said only 500 would be produced, and they ended up producing 1,200 of these cars for the US. So I believe the case was actually settled, and BMW gave them each a $4,000 credit towards another M car. maybe this angle works a little bit better with the light, so you can see some of the interior. You can even see the tint on the window, the little window washers, the fins here on the hood. A really special car. It took me quite a while to source this one. They are quite expensive and difficult to find. Sorry for that finger trouble. Let's move on to the next generation, the E34. This is probably, in terms of looks, one of my favorite M5s ever produced. This one, of course, is in very beautiful blue with the silver interior, or I think it's called San Marino, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then, of course, with the silver accent and the, what we call the throwing star wheels. The first ones actually came out with the finned wheel covers, I believe, that actually drew in air from the, or for cooling of the brakes. So the E32 was actually produced from September 88 through to August 95. They actually released two different specs of the car. 12,254 of them were produced in total, of which 8,344 had the 3.6 litre engine, and then 3,910 had the 3.8 litre engine. And of the 3.8 litre ones, actually 891 was the touring spec or station wagon, depending on how you are calling those in your language. So this specific car came out with the same engine, the S38, and then codenamed B36 because it was a 3.6 litre originally, and then later became the S38B38, which was a 3.8 litre. The two different specs, the 3.6 produced 315 horsepower with 266 pound-foot torque, and the 3.8 actually produced 347 horsepower and 295 pound-foot torque. The 3.8 litre engines were never destined for North America or again for my home market back in South Africa. This car, believe it or not, was slightly slower 0 to 60 compared to the E28 with a 6.4 second time. And this car also came out with both a 5-speed and a 6-speed transmission. 752 of them actually had the 6-speed transmission. These were also hand produced by BMW Motorsport, and believe it or not, BMW actually built a E35, which was a 2-door convertible version of this car. As I mentioned earlier, something that was very unique on the E34 was the turbine wheel covers, which later got replaced with these throwing star style. And another very interesting piece is there were multiple special editions of this E34 car. Of course, the first one was the 20 Jahre BMW Motorsport edition, and also the Johnny Cecotto and Joachim Winkelhock lightweight special. So the Johnny Cecotto edition actually focused more on luxury. 22 of those cars were produced. The Joachim Winkelhock edition was a lightweight edition, and 51 of those got produced with a weight saving of 88 pounds, and they were all jet black in color. There were also 3 other versions, one for Nagy Motors in Saudi Arabia, of which 15 were produced. And then there was a UK limited edition, which was really the last 50 produced in right-hand drive and were available in only 2 colors. And then last but not least, Italy got a Electa edition, which were only the touring or estate or wagon cars, and 20 of those were produced again only in 2 colors. I think you will agree with me that this color combination with the silver, the blue and then the silver or very light grey interior is truly spectacular. It is probably one of my favorite models in my collection. Again, very good detail. This one is also produced by Otto models. You also got this model in Titania Violet, the purple. And recently they brought out the black with the turbine wheels. So if you're looking for that, you can probably still find some. This one is actually number 1279 of 3000. But again, extremely detailed and very, very nice to display or put in your collection. And again, beautiful emblem work. You see the spotlights, fog lights, everything. Really beautiful. So let's move on to the third generation. This is deemed by many people to be still probably the best M5 ever produced. This is the E39. This was actually the very first V8 powered M5 vehicle. Was produced from October 1998 to June 2003. Just over 20,000 of them were produced, 20,482. 9,992 actually were destined for North America. It was powered by the S62 5-liter V8 engine that produced 400 horsepower and 369 pound-foot torque. And this engine actually ran at an 11:1 compression ratio, which was quite impressive. It also had a 0 to 100 time of 4.8 seconds, which is substantially quicker than its two previous generations. And you only got this car in a 6-speed manual transmission. Strangely enough, this one was not produced physically by BMW Motorsport and was not hand assembled, but this was actually the first one that moved to the normal 5 Series production line and started being produced with the rest of the 5 Series cars. This one is also by Ottomobile or Mobile. And this is number 562 of 500. You got these in the Lamar blue as well as this, I think it's an Arctic silver if I'm not mistaken. And these models are quite expensive to try and find today. You'll probably pay anything from $250 up, depending if the person you're buying from is hard up to sell or not. I actually imported this one from a guy in Ukraine that wanted to sell it. I was fortunate enough to find it. It took quite some time to locate. Again, beautiful details on this car and really special car to have in the collection. The interesting thing about the E39 M5 is also that it was one of the first ones to have hollow camshafts in the engine, and then everybody would remember that it had the grey dials on the speedometer and rev counter with a variable red line depending on the engine temperature. So that was really special for the time. It was actually the very last M5 to come in a manual transmission, and it was also quite advanced in the sense that it had a G-force sensitive lubrication system. And for me, the E39 is extremely special because that was the very first M car I ever drove personally. It wasn't my car. A friend of mine took me for a spin in his Lamar blue M5. The car actually had a Schnitzer conversion, and he actually offered for me to drive it, and from that day on I was hooked. That sweet sounding V8 was just incredible. Now let's move on to the E60. You also got the E61 wagon. I do not collect the wagons in my collection. It's not my, or the touring editions, that's not my favorite. So the E60 was also a very special car. You will remember that this was in the peak when BMW still took part in Formula 1 with the screaming V10s. So this car is actually produced from September 2004 until April 2010. 19,564 of them were produced, of which 1,025 were touring versions. It was powered by the S85 B50 V10 engine, which was derived from, of course, the Formula 1 technology. And BMW actually claimed that it ended up being a V10 because of their desire to have 500 cc's of capacity per cylinder. So 10 cylinders at 500 cc's then gives you the 5-liter capacity that this engine had. This car produced 507 horsepower and 383 pound-foot torque with a 12:1 compression ratio. Remember, the E39 was only 11:1, and this engine could actually rev 8,250 RPM, which is incredible, and also had a blistering 0 to 60 for its time of 4.2 seconds. This car only in the rest of the world came with the SMG3 transmission, which was specifically produced for the S85 engine, so it was a special and unique design. So it's not just a carryover from like your E46 M3. And in the US you could actually get it with a 6-speed manual transmission, and that transmission was sourced from the 550i, believe it or not. 1,366 of those units were produced. Again, this M5 was manufactured on a normal 5 series production line. And an interesting fact is that BMW actually created a E60 M5 CSL. You can look it up on the internet. And that specific car had a 580 horsepower 5.5 liter engine with a carbon fiber roof, and it had 110 pounds weight saving and was claimed to be 20 seconds a lap faster around the Nürburgring compared to a normal M5. This specific one, as you can see, of course, I've got the ring taxi signage on it. So everybody knows Sabine Kim, she's the queen of the ring. And I'm not sure if you can still do it, but I know previously you could rent or actually pay for a lap in the ring taxi, and different drivers would take you around the ring in these taxis. And believe it or not, there's quite a few videos of Porsches trying to keep up with Sabine in the M5, and some of them really struggled. So really impressive. What was also interesting about this M5, of course, it had the M drive and then the very special button on the steering wheel that would change the power from 400 horsepower to 500 horsepower. I think the 500 horsepower button was probably for the occasion when you have to take your mother-in-law home. That's just a joke, but incredible for a car of this size to have 500 horsepower. Again, just back to that SMG transmission, it was 20% faster in terms of shift times compared to other SMG2 transmissions. This car also had a variable M diff lock that worked with a viscous silicone fluid that was used to be manipulated in that differential to transfer, of course, the power to the wheels as necessary. This car, like I said, had the M drive for the first time with 11 modes for the SMG transmission, 2 engine power settings, the 400 and 500 horsepower. There were also 3 throttle settings and 3 suspension settings. So a lot of innovation went into this specific vehicle, and of course you also got the M6 that shared the same engine. There was a 25 Yaris special edition. You could only get it in matte frozen grey, and only 27 of those were built, and sadly none of them ever reached the US. This specific model is actually produced by Kyosho, quite a good brand if you like scale models. I'll try and go a little bit closer. You can see the felt carpet, you can see the detail inside this specific model. As you can see, is a SMG, sadly not a manual. You can also hopefully see the little pedals over here to change gear on the steering wheel. Let's see if we can open the back doors. Very detailed model. Sadly with the black, some of the details are lost. I don't know if there's anything in the rear. Some of these models I actually only opened today for the first time to do this video for all of you. Of course, BMW had a relationship with Michelin during the Formula 1 days, so a lot of Michelin sponsorship. And then hopefully we can see the representation of this beautiful V10 engine. Of course, covered with the plastic pieces. I don't know if the video will really capture the V10 emblem, but again, really nice model, very detailed, and I'm fortunate to have this one in my collection as well. Then we move on to the second to last generation, which is the F10. This specific model is actually sold by BMW. I believe it's Paragon models that made it. My pet peeve or gripe with this specific model, you can see the front suspension. The spring rates that they used in the scale model is not correct. I still plan on changing that, because the correct stance of the car should be something like that. So I'll still fix that. So you'll actually see some camber on the front wheel when when it's displayed flat. I keep all of them in their boxes, as you can see, so I have not displayed them. So yeah, still a little pet project I have to do there. This again is a good model. You got these in quite a few colors. I think you got the orange, you got the blue, the silver. I'm not sure, I think you may have even gotten the black. Again, this one has some very nice details with the opening doors, so opening hood, etc. So you can see even the seat controls, again the felt carpet, the M5 dorsal emblems. This one even has the TV screens in the back seat, which is a nice touch. And then you'll see the M emblem there on the brakes. This one's hood, boot lid does not want to stay open, so excuse the poor camera work. But again, very nice model that has all these openings and functioning pieces. Let's see if I will be able to open the hood. Some of them you have to open from underneath the car. So again, here you can see the twin turbo V8. Quite some good detail. And of course a lot of plastic covers, etc. That is very prominent in some of the new engines and cars, and a lot of that has got to do also with sound insulation. I'm trying to get the camera to focus again. So let me tell you a little bit about the F10 generation. So This generation of M5 was produced from September 2011 to October 2016. 19,533 of them were produced. It was powered by the S63 B44 turbo engine, so of course a 4.4 liter twin turbo. It had 560 horsepower and 500 pound-foot torque. The competition spec of this car actually had 15 horsepower more, and you also got some 600 horsepower special editions. This was still a rear-wheel drive only car and had a 0 to 60. That's quite impressive for a two-wheel drive car of 3.7 seconds. This specific M5 came out with the MDCT 7-speed, and then again you were able to get a 6-speed manual, of which 577 were produced. Again, this one was produced on a normal 5 Series production line, not hand-built by BMW Motorsport. There was no touring or station wagon version of this series of M5. This was the first forced induction M5, and you actually, interestingly enough, got 118 of these M5s that were both competition spec or competition package with the 6-speed manual transmission. So I think those may become quite collectible in the future. Something that is interesting on this car is it was one of the first ones to introduce the carbon ceramic brakes, and then of course LED lights was an option. And the steering rack on the M5 was 27% quicker than on a normal 5 Series road car. This car actually also had 11 special editions, of which I won't go into too much detail just for time's sake today. Then let's move on to the daddy. This is the current generation M5 F90. I don't think I've met anybody that is not in absolute awe of this vehicle. It's also powered by the S63 B44 turbo engine, and in this spec it produces 600 horsepower. The competition spec has 617 horsepower with 553 pound-foot torque. It has a blistering 3.1 second 0 to 60. As everybody knows, this car is 4-wheel drive with the ability to switch to rear-wheel drive should you own a tire store or have a friend that gives you tires at very good prices. Or in case you want to do a drift world record. So this car, interestingly enough, although it's 4-wheel drive, BMW did an astounding job in saving weight, and this car is even lighter than the previous generation F10, although it has 4-wheel drive. You'll see the carbon reinforced plastic roof, and then of course a lot of technology went into lighten the car and use different technologies to save weight. So again, this model is produced for BMW. This specific scale model, I believe, is made by Norev, which I think is a French scale model manufacturer, and recently I've started buying more and more of their models. The prices are reasonable and the quality is quite good for what you pay. So you can see the detail on this model is quite good. I have not seen any other manufacturers producing this series of M5 yet. Maybe we'll get some other manufacturers. You can see the white interior with the black contrast, really beautiful against the blue again. So this one also is one of the ones that I quite like to have in my collection, and it's actually a car I wouldn't mind driving one day. So need to get some space in the garage for one. Again, beautiful model. This one I actually had to remove all the little stickers because I've never even opened it. It arrived, I put it with the rest of the cars, and I never actually had the time to look at it in detail. But again, beautiful car. The interesting thing that I do want to show you is how the cars have grown. So if you were to put these two next to each other, so let me compare the latest generation compared to the first generation. I'll try and stand up, hopefully the camera will work with me. So you can see it is quite a bit bigger, and of course also quite a bit wider, and that's just with time, of course, and all the safety regulations and things that come into play, and also packaging of all the systems and things that's inevitable. But I would honestly say, in terms of my favorite M5s, it would probably be the E39 and the F90 would be my two top picks. Then I would say the E28 and the E60, and then E34, and last probably the F10. But that's my personal preference. I hope you enjoyed this video. Forgive the finger trouble with the video where I maybe didn't show you exactly what I was showing you whilst I was trying to read you some of the facts about the actual cars. I hope you enjoyed this video, and follow me. I'll also create similar videos on my E30 collection. I have the race cars as well. I have quite a few stories to share with you on these models. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.